Hello, everyone out there in Game Show Gumbo land out there. This is Cyndi Seidelman here once again with another exciting Gumbocast for you. We have lots to talk about this time around. We have Harry Freeman retiring from both Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Fox is up on the air on all of its reality and game shows. Jimmy Kimmel's gonna talk about the generation gap. In Just the Stats, ma'am, this time around, we talk about a whole bunch of stats compiled from the chase. And we have your new viewer Q&A section. And joining alongside me is the smartest woman that I know, Jessica Brand.
Huh, thanks. That's quite a compliment considering some of the people you know, I tell you what.
Oh, well, yeah, that is true, actually.
I know, you know some good people. Like Jamie's one of the smarter people I know for sure, so.
Yeah,
But anyway, no. She's she's someone I think that anyone and everyone who's watching this should try to give an ear out to or try to listen to what she has to say, because she's someone who's very notable. But anyway, no, I certainly have prepped a little bit and come up with a bunch of stuff about why we would look at the trends about what we do in the case and what the data says and why it's actually not surprising. That may actually surprise you because you would think it would be surprising. But given who we're talking about, we'll find out about why these results would actually be in line with what we understand mathematically about these people as individuals. And I'm going to have, I'm warning you now, I'm going to have some brags in about this. But in this case, it's going to matter because it's reflected upon the numbers. And some of the numbers I know because it's personal experience within the numbers and dealings within these personal ranges. So, again, my apologies in advance. I'm going to come across like an absolute asshole when I talk about myself here. But hopefully you can bear with me.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't have to edit that segment for another 2 weeks. But probably won't be much. So that has pretty much been your weekend, I do believe. Once that stat pad got out there, you're just neck deep in all of that wonderful stat goodness.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that's what I like to do. I like to look at raw, or maybe just the numbers, depending on the field, and I like to use the numbers to tell a story. And it's something I learned, even though I didn't get the job there, with ESPN. Numbers are nothing if you can't tell a story without them, because you can make numbers say anything you want, theoretically. But you want to look at the important numbers, and you want to look at why they're quantifiable, how they're quantifiable, and if they actually have merit, and what the meritable numbers say. Because we're using numbers, of course, as we are with our language, our verbosity, our history, our science. We're updating them constantly in everything we do. We do them in business. We do them in game shows. We do them with television. Obviously, some methods are antiquated. Like we rag on all the time how the Nielsen methodology for television is outdated. Of course it is. We know this. I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably know that and you agree with it.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, they do a count 'em up method. I mean, the problem with that now, of course, the method behind Nielsen goes back 40 or so years, when there weren't as many televisions and so forth. And of course, the music industry has adjusted to this very, very interestingly, whether or not you agree with it. Like, if a YouTube song gets a play, it gets counted as part of the total views for records and so forth. But, I mean, not everyone's...
And that's something that Billboard took into account in 2013.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, they took into account YouTube views.
Yeah. Which I think that's a really smart change because it's adjusting for consumer models. And the reason I talk about consumer models here is because, well, we're on a channel about game shows, right? And if we talk about game shows, then we have to talk about really production values. Like, did so-and-so win a prize? Okay, what does that mean for the budget? And what does this difficulty mean? What does it mean going forward? What does it mean for us as a consumer? And that can be on two levels. Does that mean for us as a player of the game show, if we want to get on it? Do we need to realize that's going to be harder? Or do we realize that things are going to be maybe a little bit simpler because they've over-adjusted necessarily? And of course, these game shows, I mean, because humans are finite and they're error-prone by definition, how many times are we going to have things that repeat and things that we can catch on with trends? These can often be defined in a lot of different ways. We can run like a t-test, a student's t-test. We can run the p-test with our confidence intervals to verify how accurate we are. We can look at something like standard deviation. We will be hearing that term a lot today. Geez, I should have broken that sentence up, but I didn't. We can talk about an ANOMA. We can talk about quantifying them in a programming language. That's what we do in baseball, especially, and SQL and R. Certainly, there's some interesting thoughts about why we can use that to retrieve database, because, like, let's take an SQL sequence. Like, I realize most of the people who listen to this probably aren't coders. I would love to hear if you are, and if what I'm saying makes sense to you, or if they've thought anything about you in a different way, please just let me know. But let's say with these shows that qualify this metric but not this one. So to make it really, really simple for everybody at home, let's take all shows that are above a 1.0, all game shows, because it's a game show channel, above 1.0 but below a 3.0 that are nationally broadcast. Hey, if we run that in SQL, we would probably just get Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Probably.
Yeah, more than likely.
I mean, that's the kind of thing we try to do, though. We try to quantify it so we can look at certain qualifiers, and then we can adjust that accordingly with weights, because not everything should be weighted equally. Again, I go back to the Nielsen example. We say that's outdated, right? But if we view that as outdated, we're going to give that less weight than, say, some kind of method that's more accurate, like, let's say, a percentage of television that was watching at a certain time slot. So, again, there are so many ways we can approach these different things. And that's part of how we operate as business. Not everyone's going to do that, because most of our standards for mediums were set 50 years ago, because the world is changing so much. But, I mean, if you're going to stay ahead of the curve, well, why not me, I figured out. So I figured out then, my father did a lot of work for big companies, so I figured I could follow in his lead and basically take advantage that way.
True. And there's something about the Nielsen stuff that many people, that they're slowly catching up, because it was only just a couple of years ago they added the +7 edition of DVR, which is taken over from the regular VCR, which VCR you couldn't track, DVR you can, and so they have them built in, from satellite boxes and stuff like that. And plus, this is also coming from someone who used to be. I used to be part of the Nielsen families.
Yeah, I almost was, unfortunately.
We had it as a different way, because we had trackers. We had little, like, pager-like things. I had an MP3 player where I would listen to radio stations. Had to plug it into plug my MP3 player into the tracker where I could plug in my headphones and put that in. So when I was traveling up through Seattle, when I was living in Renton, they would track what I was listening to. Also, when I was watching game shows watching TV over the air, and just getting information that way. So that's my experience with Nielsen actually being part of.
Sorry. No, that was a
stat overload. Stat overload.
Not that. Yeah, no, that's my alarm. And it's a reminder to watch TV shows we're gonna have.
Okay. All right.
I forgot I had that on.
Yeah. Speaking of, I got some stuff I want to talk about before we get to our first big topic. On YouTube, there's a YouTuber by the name of Danielle Bruce, DANILBRUCE, who is uploading colorized versions of old black and white game shows, from their kinescopes. The kinescopes are black and white, but he or she or they have gone in and colorized them via a program. I find this really cool and really interesting. It gives a look at how game shows did kind of look at color back then. Also interesting to look at the sets. I know it's not a perfect colorization of these kinescopes, because I compared an episode to a couple of pictures that are on the Bill Cullen homage page, so to speak, that Matt Ottinger and Adam Neediff take care of. And while it's not perfect, it's a pretty darn good job giving the person's budget limitations. And he's done it. Yeah.
I mean, that's just, the limits of technology that we have these days, and short of spending a bunch of money to self-colorize it, though. I mean, I don't think that would really be possible in this day and age, unfortunately, for cost reasons and really practicality reasons. If you were a company that wanted to do that, I just don't think the demand is out there overall. But that said, it's kind of nice to see this. It's kind of, a nice surprising change that I don't think anybody expected to see going forward. But I mean, I kind of like seeing that,
Yeah, I do too. And I kind of have and it kind of harkens back because when I posted about this on the Discord, the Game Show Gumbo Discord, there were some people that weren't too thrilled about it because it kind of brought up a specter that had haunted the entertainment industry in the mid to late 80s, and I think you know about this. Remember when Ted Turner bought all of those old MGM movies that were in black and white?
Oh yeah, I'd heard a little bit about that. Yeah.
Okay, so what he did was he spent millions of dollars colorizing all these old black and white movies. Now, they were shot in black and white. They weren't shot in Technicolor, they were shot in black and white.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of backlash about this, even congressional hearings about this. And I think what happened was Ted Turner was allowed to colorize some of these movies, but there had to be the originals had to be kept in black and white. Like, he could make a copy and then colorize it, but the originals still had to be in black and white as originally intended by the original director and producer and production company. And the difference between that and what Danny is doing is a lot of the stuff that he's put up, a lot of stuff that they put up was broadcast in color. Like Price is Right was on NBC and they broadcast in color back in 56. The What's My Line episodes that he put up, I think one of them was originally broadcast in black and white. I think the 56 episode was in black and white originally, but the 66 episode was broadcast in color because that's when CBS started their big color push. But it is interesting to me seeing technology move forward to where this is even possible to do for somebody that has something like Sony Vegas or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, think about where the origins of where color photographs started from. It's longer ago than you think. There was a photo series with Mark Twain and a bunch of other people who chose to get basically a very early version of autochrome. I think it was in the early 20s at least. Actually, no, Twain died before then, so it would have been
1905, I think.
Yeah,
early 1900s.
Yeah, it's 1910. Yeah. But there were a lot of these photos from around the turn of the century that got through that. And eventually, though, I think we'll be able to recognize between gray gradients, basically. And that really is the big issue with these technologies now. But you consider when that's the big issue of where we are with being able to identify things, it's just remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think anyone would have seen this becoming more widespread on a consumer common basis. Like, I mean, you consider what we have out there now, what's remarkable, like Photoshop and so forth. We talk about Adobe Voice, which is a technology that really never gets reported about. We had Google Glass a few years ago. It's remarkable how quickly this has happened. I mean, who would have thought? Like, I was just thinking about this earlier today. We had in the original Spy Kids movie, there was a watch that could do everything and all these apps on it. Well, that's a smartwatch. That's pretty common technology. Like, the spy movies are becoming real, folks.
True. That's absolutely true. And
I guess need a seat ejector for when I have annoying passengers in my car.
Yeah, you hit a button, the glass comes up, and then you hit another button, and they get gassed, they fall asleep.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. The instant chloroform, yeah.
It's easier than chloroform.
Yeah.
Since where we become John Lovitz all of a sudden, how funny you should ask. Anyway. You live an interesting life, Jessica. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you live in interesting times. Isn't that the quote?
Yeah, that is true. But
I mean,
it always seems to be like science fiction movies also were able to tell us what the future would bring.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about that from a consumer and an inventor perspective, though. Those are the inventions that we don't have, and they're fantasized about, but we want to make them a reality, though. Like, I mean, you talk about what insecticide did for Napoleon's troops, canning foods really dates back to Napoleon's France, essentially. So what we try to do is we try to integrate what isn't there and try to make it reality. I mean, if we don't have inspiration for something, then what can we really make? I mean, granted, you have to have creativity, you have to have the know-how, but you have to have a basis for anything you do, right? Or at least there needs to be or strictly speaking, in terms of a really base economics, a want or even better, creating a need.